Alright, hi everyone and welcome back to the observatory. So I just wanted to give a quick update on the solar power project following its first full night of testing. So if we open up Victron Connect, which is the app for monitoring all the devices, here we can see all the devices. Let's move you down here. Okay, so the first full night after the system was powered up and installed, I left it to do a full charge cycle on the batteries just to make sure everything was back up to the optimal condition, and then I proceeded to a full test overnight, as I would normally have all my equipment running in the observatory, just to see what my current usage demand is on the system, how long the batteries would last, and if there's any changes or improvements I can make to my own workflow to reduce power demand on the system and obviously prolong any life of batteries. So for the first test, as I said, I had everything running in the observatory as normal. So that's the two laptops for each of the rigs. I had both rigs running, the one inside the observatory with the RASA 11 and the ASI2600. It was cooled to -5 degrees C, and the ambient temperature at the time varied between sort of 30 degrees inside the observatory until it dropped off during the night to around about 25. And then I also had the external rig running, which is the CGX with the Edge 11, and it also had an ASI2600 on there, and its cooling was also set to -5 degrees C. The other thing was on the Edge 11 outside. I also had the dew controller running with 4 dew bands on the system, and they were all cranked up as outside we do get dew forming quite quickly as the temperature cools in the evening. And then inside the observatory, obviously we've got the rotation system, the shutter controls, they were all on as normal, and the battery charger for the shutter, it was all connected up and running for when the shutter is closed. And also in the observatory I've got the 5 security cameras for monitoring the different rig positions and inside the observatory. So 5 TAPO cameras of various models, and also an Netatmo weather system was running as normal in the observatory. It's got the internal monitoring and it also has communications with the external sensors. And then lastly, we've also got the main Wi-Fi access point and network point inside the observatory, which ties back to also the wireless cubes that go back to the house. So all that equipment was being powered, and then I think that's everything. There was a couple of other minor things. So for example, a Google Home Mini, it was connected on the system, and also the interior lights for the observatory, they were connected but they weren't on as far as I'm aware. And also the ventilation system for the observatory was also on and running. The fan runs for the start of the evening, it runs all through the day, but it was on at the start of the evening, and then I think round about when the temperature hits about 26 degrees or something, the temperature the fan for that unit shuts off, but obviously the controller is still running. I don't think there's any other than the usual additional guide cameras and things like that on the scopes. I don't think there was any other power demand on the system that I can think of. Just having a look around to see if anything prompts my memory, but I think that is pretty much it. So if we have a look at the system and we go on to the load shunt, so here we are in the Victron Connect. If I go on to the load shunt and let that open up and load its data, and we scroll back a couple of days to when I actually did the test on the trends. So here we are looking at the current status as of now. So if I zoom out to 12 hours and then scroll back to the night of the 5th or the 6th, whatever it was, we'll see the trend. Not still loading the data in the background, I think. Where are we? Oh, here we go. Alright, so if I change the settings to power and and on the battery we can see state of charge. Am I on the right place? Yes, I think I am. Okay, so here we are looking at the trend, and we've got a 12-hour trend here. So during the day, if I use the scroller here, we can see the system was fully charged and running. So the time on the trend there is 1740, and obviously there's still a bit of power getting put into the system from the solar panels for about another hour or so, but not a lot. It's just a few watts as the sun swung right round off the panels pretty much by that time. So I set up the imaging session, and if we have a look at the red trend, we can see the state of charge and percentage, and if we look at the blue trend, that's the power demand in watts coming off the system. So a negative is power being drawn off the batteries, and positive is being put into the batteries. So as we can see, as the system runs through the night, I've obviously been playing around and setting up equipment early in the evening, so there wasn't a huge demand on the system. But then we set off the main imaging sessions. What time was that? Around about 8:30, 9 o'clock. We can see the power demand on the system is at 200 watts, so there's a fair bit of power coming in off the batteries there, and the battery state of charge is slowly dropping, so 93%, and it continues to drop through the night as you'd expect. Power demand stays roughly 200%, 200 watts, and then just after midnight, for whatever reason, the power demand drops off a little bit, whether that's the ambient temperatures changing and there's not enough, there's not as much power demand being put on by the cooler and the camera, and it continues through the night. So here we are, 2:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, there's another slight increase in the power demand again. The batteries continue to decline, and I think the sessions were both set up to finish at 4 AM in the morning. So that would be around about there, where there was still 165 watts being pulled off the system, and the batteries were sitting at 68% at this point. And we can see I didn't intervene in the system at all. I just left it to run. I didn't actually go down and check the system until around about 8 o'clock in the morning or something. And we can see the power continues to be pulled off the system until it hits 61%, at which point the system, I think the voltage had dropped to 21 volts. If we switch over to voltage, we can see there's the voltage curve, and the batteries dropping down as we hit 22 volts. It reports here on the trends. It's 7:08 in the morning. The system actually did shut itself down to protect the batteries, so I think that battery cut-off is set at 21 volts. Why has it just jumped? I need to go all the way back. Sorry for that. Yeah, so here we go. Yeah, so just at that point there, at 7:10 in the morning, the system actually did shut itself down, and it almost immediately came back on again, because at that point the sun also started to charge the batteries again. So I don't think it was down for very long. Certainly when I went through to my office and had a look at the screens, I could see the laptops were disconnected off the remote desktop, but I could still see all the security cameras. So I think what had happened is the batteries system had shut down, and the laptops had gone over to battery, and then the laptops had gone into their sleep mode, because I don't have them running on battery only, so they go into sleep mode after 20 minutes or whatever it is. So yeah, the batteries, the laptops had shut down. But the system then switched itself back on as the power started to come in off the solar panels, and throughout the day the charge just continued to increase, and obviously I came down, started messing around with the system, so I probably put about a little bit more demand on the system as I fired up the laptops again or whatever I was doing. And then we can see throughout the day the system started to recharge itself. So at this point here we can see there's about 300 watts going back into the batteries. The voltage continues to increase throughout the day, so by 10 o'clock in the morning there's 400 watts going into the batteries, and if I switch over to state of charge, the batteries are at 70% charge at this point, 10:45 AM, and it continues to charge through the morning. The sun's probably getting up now onto the panels, and we can see the batteries continue to increase all the way to just after 1 PM in the afternoon, and it's still at 89%, but the batteries are up at 28.42%. The total power demand off the batteries, off the solar panels was 500. It peaked at 526 watts. The panels will only produce what you're asking for, that's why it never sees your full power demand there. And then I continued to mess around with the system again during the afternoon. The power demand comes off with the solar panels as everything's charged and there's no demand being placed on the system, and effectively the system is fully charged at that point. So what time is that? Roughly 22 in the afternoon. The system is now fully charged again. So that's brilliant. It still gives me a few hours of playtime in the afternoon where I can mess around with the system, draw power off the PV knowing that I'm not going to be drawing power off the batteries, and they'll remain fully charged for the rest of the day for the next imaging session. So you can continue to see the power demand coming off the panel continues to decline, and all the way up until the sun's probably disappeared there, and the battery voltage just drops down slightly as I've probably been doing stuff for the observatory, starting to use a bit of power, and it stabilizes down, and that's basically where it runs for the whole next night, where I wasn't doing any imaging session. I just left it to see how it would decline, and we can see the battery holds up quite well with just the base power demand on the observatory. And then the sun comes up again in the morning and starts to top up the batteries again. So overall, pretty good. What I would change in the future obviously is post imaging session power demand. So I need to change my sequences in Nina to actually turn off the cameras, so stop cooling the cameras. That will obviously take the demand off. So if we've got two imaging cameras pulling a couple of amps each at 12 volts, so that's probably about 50-60 watts of power getting pulled by the cameras that don't need to be. And the other thing is the dew heaters. So obviously they're continuing to run, putting power and putting heat onto the dew straps, and that doesn't need to be as well at that time. So I need to get something to play around with the dew heater control. But certainly with the Nina at the moment, with the equipment I've got, it's easy to stop putting the cooler demand on the cameras and reduce that power demand there. And I dare say if I'd done that, the battery system wouldn't have shut down automatically itself. We would have continued to run quite happily until the sun came up and started charging the panels again. So a very positive first night. So certainly we've got enough power in the system to manage two full imaging runs on two different telescopes with two laptops running, and I dare say there's some more optimization I can do of power demand in the observatory. And once I manage to get my switched supplies to the various devices connected, and get some sort of piece of software there to tie in with the Nina switch functions, then obviously I can then start to looking at shutting off dew heaters, etc., and further reduce the demand on the system, or potentially even shut down the telescopes after they've gone back to the home position and turn off their power, etc. So we'll continue to monitor the system. I'm on my way back to work this week, and so obviously I won't be using it. It'll just be left in an idle state over the next 4 weeks, and once I get back the next time again, we can start looking at what I can do to tweak the system. So as I say, very pleased with the performance of the system for what I've put in. Yes, there's plenty of power there for running the sessions throughout the night, and yeah, a great first start. So I just thought I'd give you a quick update there on the system and how it's performed on its first full load demand session. Alright, so on that note, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like the video, hit that like button, and obviously feel free to drop any comments, questions or suggestions down in the comment section, and I'll look forward to catching you again in the near future. So in the meantime, clear skies and take care everyone. Speak to you later.